all those, going back to 84, so 84 to 87, I would have been like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and vividly remember Motley Crue becoming very popular about that time. The crazy thing is, of those 4 or 5 bands you mentioned, arguably, they're all still somewhat relevant today.
Yeah.
30 years later.
Yeah.
Or maybe 40 years later. That's
another
wild.
smart rock star that I mentioned is John Bon Jovi.
Okay.
And super smart. Lars
Diversified.
Lars Ulrich from Metallica.
Okay.
Very smart. I'd love to tell you a story about Metallica and Guns N' Roses at some point, hopefully in this. But very, very smart. Show me a smart rock star. I'll show you a successful rock star.
I would imagine. I mean, because Lars Ulrich was the leading voice at the outset of the digital age, which was Napster.
Yes.
And ultimately the pirating of music at that point. It says I can see sort of the pioneering of the paid streaming, industry at that from that perspective.
I don't think they saw the possibilities of it the way it evolved, and when you see Napster the way it came on, like we're just going to steal this and give it away. Right at the time, you had people listening to music on their computer. That was before we had these phones.
Right.
If you think about that, before you had an iPod, and it was just
Right.
And I think that they looked at that and weren't sure what to do with it. And that was still at a time when the record deal meant a lot before you had Pro Tools as an option that you could put on your Mac and record really good, not high-end, but really good material like many people have done. So it was really just one of the first steps. And you take a band like Metallica, where you have between Lars and Jason, 2 very sharp guys, their management company, Q Prime, Peter Minch and Cliff Bernstein are 2 of the best managers in the history of entertainment. And they still have Metallica. They had Def Leppard during that whole run through the 80s, as an example. And Madonna off and on. They have Red Hot Chili Peppers right now. They have I'm not wanting to say Chris Stapleton. I'm trying to think of the other country act who's Eric Church now in their stable, but many others. But they were against that because any time an entertainer sees somebody else making money on them, they want their piece of it. Irving Azoff, the manager of the Eagles, is the one who, especially, like I said before, if you sold one of your Eagles tickets and pocketed $100, as far as he's concerned, they're entitled to $95 of that. And the same with their music. And the Eagles are the only band I ever saw that made us confiscate a video recorder at Deer Creek.
Okay.
From a quadriplegic who came to all of our shows. And I got called on stage during the show to literally see the guy with it under a blanket. You saw this red light. Nowadays, now that was in 1994. Nowadays, you've got everybody videoing you.
Right.
And but going back to the Napster thing, I think it was just an early thing. I think they made their point with it, yet Metallica probably loves streaming more than anything, as well as anyone else right now these days.
Well, yeah, you mentioned that. So like kind of funny juxtaposition of where we were and where we are. I was in college when Napster was out. And you're right, we had one of my fraternity brothers, in our room, we had internet service into each room, and he'd hook up his laptop with an audio cable into the input, and it was just downloading everything you could possibly download to play for parties and whatever. And but then next to that, you had the massive case of all the CDs, and you still had like the Columbia Records get 8 CDs for a penny kind of club at the same time. Yeah, who'd have thought? I mean, obviously everything evolves, but nowadays, I mean, heck, it's like when I was a kid, it's like, what is an 8-track? Now our kids are like, what are those CDs? Like, what are you talking about? Why do you need to put anything in any sort of player? Just download and go.
And yet you still can't get the quality of a good old-fashioned vinyl album on a really good turntable with a really good needle and a really good set of speakers. You still just can't get that. You can get close to it, but...
Well, there's a heck of a cult following of people that seek out vinyl.
There is. And you see these acts that are putting out stuff on vinyl. You know, Taylor Swift, you can bash her all you want, but what does she do? She drops a new album and puts it on vinyl with different sets of it, like collector's items. Now, are they going to sell 1 million of each? No. But is it going to satisfy her fan base? Yes. Are they going to make money on it? Sure, they'll make some money on it. But, you know, when you've just seen the way things have evolved, especially more towards us, and before you got here, we were talking about Spotify and streaming. You know, streaming is where it's at right now. And whether the bands or entertainers want to accept it or not, you have a better chance of getting streamed than you do getting radio airplay. Radio is okay, but radio doesn't mean as much now like it used to. It may mean something with some rap, hip hop, pop music. In rock, it's background. And country, I think radio is good with country to an extent, but not over the top like as important as it was 25 years ago, let's say, because there's just so many options. You know, we were talking before you got here. On an average day, there are over 62,000 pieces of content uploaded onto Spotify. Let that sink in.
That's crazy.
On an average day, there are over 90,000 pieces of content uploaded onto Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. Now, a lot of that's the same song on each platform, mind you, but still, there's just so much out there. And I think all too often, somebody puts out something and you start listening to it, it's like, oh God, this is horrible after 30 seconds. Let me go to the next song. Nope. I'm going back to my playlist, and I'm going to pull up whoever my favorite band is of the moment right now, whether it's a current great artist or whoever. I'm going to just go back to listening to that.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Industrious Podcast. Thank you all for joining us from wherever you guys get your podcasts, or if you're tuning in to the Assessa YouTube channel, thank you for tuning in. As you guys have already figured out, we are doing a little entertainment slant today. Mr. Steve Gerardi is our guest. Steve, welcome to the Industrious Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Steve, you head up SG Entertainment. Before we get back into the world of entertainment and maybe I should say the business of entertainment, let's go back to the early years where, give us some background on yourself, where you were born, raised, and then ultimately we'll feed into what happened at 15.
I was born in Columbus, Ohio, and probably a rebellious kid. And now I'm a rebellious adult, I guess. And, like anyone else, you have dreams. I always wished I could have been a rock star, as an example. So in 1974, I was a sophomore in high school, 15 years old. A new album came out by Edgar Winter called They Only Come Out at Night, which was a great album. It had, the song Frankenstein was on it, the instrumental, probably the last great instrumental song to ever be on FM radio, but it had a lot of other stuff, and I really liked that. The guitar player was Rick Derringer, who is one of two rock stars I ever got into an argument with. Chuck Berry was the other. But and they were coming in concert in Columbus, Ohio at St. John's Arena. And so a friend of mine and I went, and our mothers had to drive us there because we couldn't drive at that time. And I remember sitting there. The opening act was the James Gang. And this was after Joe Walsh had left to join the Eagles. So they were led by a guy named Tommy Bolin, who sadly overdosed a couple years later. And I'm sitting there watching these people running around wearing these T-shirts that said OSU Pep Board. And they looked like, and they must have been just ushers or whatever, but it's like, this looks really cool. I just said to my buddy John Kramer, this is what I want to do. And it just struck me that people can do this. And so I became curious and tried to learn about the industry, which there was no real reference point. And I eventually started, I was booking, at times I tried to book my own shows with local bands. And so you would take the band, rent the VFW Lodge, and maybe you rent it on a Saturday night. And on that Friday night, you had to be strategic, and you would put flyers when Eastmore was playing, my alma mater was playing at home, put flyers on the cars. Okay. When Bishop Hartley was playing at home, where I went one year, and when Walnut Ridge was playing at home, you put flyers on all the cars. That's called marketing of party at the VFW Lodge on Livingston Avenue with a band, and it's $2 to get in. And except then I wasn't smart enough to take a piece of I should have taken a piece of the top of it, but that really I really got bit by that. And from there, I started slowly working with bands in Columbus, Ohio, booking bands. I was not a good bass player when I tried to be a musician, but I could book our band.
All right.
And at one point, I became aware of the promoters that promoted in the Columbus area, which was Jam out of Chicago, Belkin out of Cleveland, and Sunshine Promotions out of Indianapolis. Even though there were a couple of others that promoted, so I always had this curiosity factor of who was running the shows. And I always took a liking to probably more to Sunshine Promotions. They just always seemed to be more welcoming, and it was very flattering. This is the early 80s when I would get a call like from the owner, Dave Lucas or Steve Sebesma, hey, what do you think about this in Columbus? They wanted my opinion on things. And that really just made me want to be part of the team. And, I had come to a crossroad in life, and I decided to move to California with a girlfriend just to try to find myself. But before I did that, I drove to Indianapolis and had a meeting with Dave Lucas, Steve Sebesma at Sunshine, and just to say, I really want to work for you guys. And so, well, you know what? You'll be our next hire. We don't know when that's going to be. Okay, well, I'm going to California, but I'm ready to come back. I'm ready to move here. So you fast forward to April of '84, as I was working for my then girlfriend at her beauty salon in downtown San Francisco. Get a phone call one day. Steve? Yes, it's Dave Lucas. Hey, you ready to come to work for us? Yes. Okay, here we go. And in my first day in the office, they told me, we have to go to the Vogue nightclub on that Thursday night. We're going to judge the Q95 7-Up girls with these new DJs, Tom and Bob. So, okay, so go to the Vogue with my coworker, Rick Monroe, and meet Bob and Tom. And here are these girls walking around in bikinis and high heels, and I'm thinking, this is so cool. Wow, this is going to be every night. Right. And so suddenly it's like I'm an instant celebrity with that. And then I had to fly to Evansville 2 days later to produce a show with Motley Crue. And it was going to take place at Mesker Music Theater, an outdoor venue, but we had to move it inside because of bad weather. But so basically 10 years from the day, that was on May 13th of '84, so exactly 10 years to the day, from the day I went to my first concert, I produced my first show.
That's awesome.
And when I was at the, there was this hotel down there called the Executive Inn, and I remember going, down there to dinner that night, and I look around and I think that's the band right there. And so I go and introduce myself, and and here's Fred Saunders, their biker-looking security guy. So we just clicked. Rich Fisher, God bless his soul, their road manager. We clicked, and here are the 4 band guys who are all about my age. So I'm hanging out with them, and suddenly this is like, wow, I can't believe this. I didn't know their music, But that was a friendship that lasted for like 10 plus years with those guys. And it was always just fun. But it was, I thought every show was going to be like that. And it was far from that because you rarely interacted with the entertainer.
Yeah. So how did things progress? I mean, at what point, I'm probably fast forwarding a little bit, but at what point did you say, you know what, it's time for me to kind of do my own thing?
So as we progressed I wanted to get more into I was more production, which is putting it all together.
Okay.
But I also worked a little bit with the tour designer marketing department, which I didn't care for that. But I wanted to get into talent buying. And there was no way they were going to just turn me loose and say, okay, you run with Mellencamp, you run with Bon Jovi. No, it was, let's find something for you. And coincidentally, that was right at the very same time that the Indiana Roof Ballroom opened.
So what, can you really quick give a quick explanation what talent buying
is making deals with entertainers to play shows.
Okay.
Whether it's a concert, whether it's a private event, whether it's a festival, whether it's a...
In simplistic terms, hiring
exactly
the entertainer.
And kind of knowing what buttons to push, what buttons not to push. And a lot of that just takes, you've got to be a realist when you're booking entertainment. Entertainers aren't going to say, well, you know what, this is a good charity. Our fee's $100,000, but for you it's $25,000. That doesn't happen. It's more like our normal fee is $100,000, but for a special event it's $150,000. But booking it's one thing, producing it is another. And most people don't think that all you do is just turn over the writer to an AV company. You don't do that. That is dumb. You never do that. You want somebody to get in the middle of this that understands this is what we can do, this is what we can't do, and this is how we're going to make this work. I like working with a rock and roll company over an AV company. And I also started working with contemporary Christian music. And one artist that I really bonded well with was Sandy Patty. Mm-hmm. So at the time when they started building an amphitheater, which the site where the venue is now called Ruoff, it was called Deer Creek. Yep. That was the 3rd and a half site. Okay, there was Westfield we looked at. That got shot down. Then they looked at the White River State Park where the present amphitheater is, but that's before all that developed. Mm-hmm. Thank God we never built that because that would have been a bad design. The concept that they had would not have worked. For a short time, I think they had something off of West 86th Street, west of 465, but then they settled in Noblesville where they were really welcoming of wanting some development, and you had a farmer that coincidentally had about a 270-acre farm that was selling it. And so the stars were aligned, and they cleared that farm in August of 88, and we started construction right then and had a very mild winter. And we opened on our first show was May 20th of 1989, and it was Sandy Patty. And as we wanted to try to have a Hoosier artist open the venue. Yeah. Mellencamp wanted nothing to do with the amphitheaters. And just a year earlier, we had just did a show with John at the fairgrounds.
Okay.
For about 40,000 people. We knew Michael Jackson probably has no clue that he was from Indiana. David Lee Roth, there was no real Hoosier. And I said, well, what about Sandy Patty? And that would actually be a good idea because it was a simple show. You have to get started somehow. Mm-hmm. And it was a basic production. It was a real easygoing crowd. And I had to just chase her and her husband down. She wanted to do it. Her husband, manager at the time, he didn't want to. And finally, I doubled the money. And she said, I'll do it for that only if I did, but I'm going to donate half of that money to my charity. So that was our opening show there. And that really meant a lot to me. I always said that we had 4 important shows in our first year. Our first show was Sandy Patty. The second would have been July 1 with Frank Sinatra. The third was July 15th with Grateful Dead. And the fourth was August 30, I want to say, with Elton John. Now, Elton John's booking agent was a guy named Howard Rose, who Well, since Elton's done, that's done. Howard Rose had Chicago. He had Dan Fogelberg. He had another guy named Jimmy Buffett. And Rose came out to the venue, and I just remember hearing him saying to Dave and Steve, "You're getting Buffett next year." That was huge for us.
Oh, yeah.
And so
I remember growing up and going to the Jimmy Buffett concert at what was then Deer Creek every year.
It's
every
always,
summer.
and it will always be Deer Creek.
Yeah.
I even tell my kids today, like, I don't care what it says on the sign. I don't care who the sponsor is about the naming rights. It's Deer Creek.
So that name came to Dave Lucas one day. And it just came to him. And it just worked like a charm. Because there's actually a creek that runs through there.
Okay.
And it's
that's where all the people on the Dead shows would go into the retention pond to shower. Or to bathe, I should say.
That creek was called Sand Creek.
Okay.
And the original corporate name was Sand Creek Partners because Deer Creek had a partner, Conseco.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting. Well, you mentioned this band. If I go down my own memory lane, you mentioned Styx. And I have to say, of all the shows that I've seen anywhere, let alone Deer Creek, probably the greatest live performance I've ever seen was when Kansas opened for Styx at Deer Creek back, I think it was the summer of 96. Might have been 95, but I'm pretty positive it was summer of 96. Now, from a pure, we are a band that knows how to put on a live show. Both those bands actually were phenomenal.
And they still are. And I worked with Styx a lot. And I've always enjoyed working with them. The last time I had them in town a few years ago was for a fundraiser, and doggone it, they opened up with a new song. And just, you don't want to hear new music. And when I book a classic rock band, as an example, I'm very clear, we want the hits only. I would rather have 60 minutes of hits than 90 minutes, which includes 30 minutes of new music.
Yeah.
Or I'd rather have 60 minutes of hits and 2 or 3 covers, but no new music. People don't want to hear it. And I get that an artist is a creator. I guarantee you, as we're sitting here right now, John Mellencamp is creating, whether it is painting, whether it is writing music, whether it is doing woodwork. He always has to do something. Peter Frampton is probably creating as we speak right now. Does that mean I want to hear his new music? No, I don't. Just period.
Right.
But I also think they get tired of playing their hits.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I can see, but I mean, I can certainly understand both sides of that argument. An artist wants to show off what they've been doing, but what connects you, especially if it's a classic rock or any sort of classic former, I was big in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. What connects you to that artist was the music they had at that time.
Exactly. And the one thing, people want to hear it just like the record.
Yeah.
And Laura Steele, a great DJ in town, pointed that out to me about 5 years ago. And people, rarely do you want to hear a band take a song and stretch it out in a certain way or do a different version of it. And, as much as I love Bruce Springsteen, Springsteen hasn't played in town since, I think, 2009. And when he played, he was playing a lot of new music, but that was at the time when social media was starting to take off, and it really got out there. He's doing different versions of his songs, and I think that really hurt him. Just like as much as I love John Mellencamp, his dad is a dear, dear friend of mine. John, for a long time, was taking his songs and playing them in a different way. And I think that people want to hear the hit just like it sounds on the radio. If you like something drawn out, then go see Fish, go see Goose, go see the Dead. I'm a born again Deadhead. Go.
Yeah, that's what jazz music is for. Every song is played in a different arrangement.
And you know what though? You know what's great about jazz? Jazz is live.
Yeah.
I guarantee you will not see a jazz show where there are tracks underneath. And there's a lot of tracks underneath a lot of classic rock shows, a lot of live shows that you see, there are tracks. And the tracks can be just rhythm. They can be drums. They can be a lot of vocals. I always thought it was interesting. I did a show with Whitesnake a few years ago. And David Coverdale, who's always been his own worst enemy. He's an angry rock star. And Coverdale would not do a meet and greet because they said he had to rest his voice. So I thought it was interesting that on stage, boy, those vocals sure sound good. But then between songs, you were talking, it sounded like this. But the vocals sounded just like the record. And and the backup vocals, which was him on the record most of the time, sounded just like him. Even when the bass player was off the microphone, it was sounding really good. So that turned me off quite a bit. But there are a lot of, jazz is always live. Yet there are rock bands that are live. The Stones, I need to go see them. I'm not. They'll be in Chicago tomorrow and I think on Sunday. Mm-hmm. The Stones are live. Dead and Company are live. Tedeschi Trucks Band.
That's a great
live band.
Yeah.
They are, and I like a live. I would much rather hear a rock star that can't hit a note at the age of 70 than a 30-year-old pop star having to fake it.
Is there a rock star out there right now that could top Mick Jagger at his current? I mean, if I could have half of the health and lifestyle that guy has at his age,
for 80, he's amazing. And there were videos I saw on Facebook of him working out. I got to produce 3 Rolling Stone shows in 1989, and 1 in Louisville, 2 here at the Hoosier Dome.
Was that Steel Wheels? No.
Steel Wheels tour.
Steel Wheels?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was on December 7th of 89, that's the only show my mother ever came to. And they gave her own pass with her name on it. Nice. She could have gone, my mother could have gone in the dressing room. But I got to hang out with the Stones. And Mick would do 20 minutes on a Stairmaster before he'd go on stage to loosen up.
Wow.
I mean, now granted, that was 35 years ago, but still he was 45 years old and would do that. Right. But the rest of the band,
not so much.
Yeah. They're doing rock star things.
I had to take them through customs and immigration at the airport. They had on that tour, they had a national tour promoter called CPI out of Canada, Michael Cole, who I've always admired. They crossed the United States border 6 times.
Well, on this podcast, we talk about a variety of different businesses, and even though they range from industry to industry, we all have a lot of the same issues. Mm-hmm. What would you say are some of the biggest issues that you run into in your business?
People have a preconceived notion about the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
And they don't realize how big of a business it is, how much money is involved, what it takes to produce entertainment. People have preconceived notions over venues, over ticketing. And ticketing has just become a big issue currently. This whole business with this investigation of Live Nation owning Ticketmaster is a waste of time. What are they going to accomplish? Absolutely nothing. Are they going to lower ticket prices? No. What are they going to do? Say to Irving Azoff, well, you know what? You need to tell the Eagles when they go on tour that they have to cut 8 semi-trucks of production out so they can save. They're not going to do that. They're not going to save anybody 1 red cent.
You had a passion at 15. Mm-hmm. You're a little bit older than 15 today.
Yep,
how is that passion still there?
It is. I don't care to go to a live event unless it's a band I want to see. Just like I don't care to go to. I live for football. I want to watch football in my easy chair.
Yeah.
On my own TV with my own bathroom, my own kitchen right there. But I still love what I do, and I probably, as I'm getting older, I'm more concerned about little things. I'm a sound fanatic. People, I think, overlook sound. Sound is one of the most important elements in a live presentation, whether it's a band playing at the corner bar or whether it's a band playing in the stadium. Sound is so important, and I really push, especially on my corporate events, trying to have good quality sound. You don't want it loud, and I'm the first person to say turn it down. I'm the only person that ever asked AC/DC sound man to turn down the volume at Deer Creek, which I did because it was just blasting too hard.
Yeah.
And I loved AC/DC. I love AC/DC. I guess as you go on, you really appreciate the work that people do. You really appreciate what the musicians are about and how passionate musicians are. They love to play. But the live thing is big. And you know what else is big right now? Merchandise. Mm-hmm. I cannot tell you the numbers that I hear from people that on the inside are astonishing. People buying merchandise. Sometimes these shows, you'll see these shows going through, like at Ruoff or Deer Creek. Ruoff is not a client of mine. At Deer Creek, they may have 8 trucks of production, semi-trucks, and 1 semi-truck of merchandise.
Wow.
And that trailer is getting switched out every couple shows. When Taylor Swift comes through here in November, I wonder how many trucks alone will be merchandise because they'll do a ton of merchandise.
Tons and tons and tons. What did I tell you this? My wife and daughter went to a Taylor Swift show a month and a half ago, and I'm trying to remember. Was it like she grossed like $10 million every single concert or some?
It could be that.
I think that was the number.
On merch alone?
No, like in general. I mean, it's unbelievable.
When you see that gross,
I mean, there's a lot to come out of that, but
there is. It's people will see that. Well, actually, I would think it'd probably be a little more than that. But let's just say it grosses $12 million. What did it cost to get to that? And how much did the venue cost? How much were your union stagehands? How much was catering? How much was your production traveling in those 50, 60 semi-trucks and your support crew of several hundred people? How much did all that cost? And at times, it's almost like saying you bought a new car, you bought a new Chevrolet, you bought a Corvette for $100,000. Well, that doesn't mean that Penske Chevrolet made $100,000.
Right.
Doesn't mean Chevrolet made $100,000 or that. But people interpret that and say, well, such and such went on the road and they took in, Madonna just came off and it grossed over $500 million. Obviously, she made some money. But
the word gross is the word gross for a reason.
It doesn't show the net.
Yeah.
And I keep track of everything going on in town, and it is impossible to say there's nothing to do. And yet there are times when there are 2, 3, and 4 major shows happening. Last Sunday alone, you had Janet Jackson at Cambridge, and you had Santana and Counting Crows up at Deer Creek, and I think there was still something else going on in town. I mean, that is just, there's a lot going on.
Sure.
And at times, I think the bigger shows are hurting the smaller shows, but, by the time you factor in summertime, everything else going on, yet you still see the Indians doing good downtown. We're going to see our Colts hopefully having a good attendance. Look at the Fever right now.
Right.
If the three of us would have said a year ago, do you really think that the WNBA would turn around like this? We would have said no. But look at that. I hope that lasts a long time.
Agreed.
I think I saw a stat on the WNBA so far this season. It was something to the effect of maybe it's in total numbers 1.5 million viewers to date, whereas this time last year it was 300,000 viewers.
I saw something like that.
Something
too.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I question for you as we kind of start to wrap this up.
Sure.
I want to go just ask one question because we kind of talked about your sort of genesis moment of the industry. If you're talking to 20-year-old Steve, or give or take a couple of years, what's the one piece of advice that you would give 20-year-old Steve or any 20-year-old out there these days?
That's easy. Get a college degree. Learn how to speak.
Okay, interesting.
And you've got to look at the entertainment industry. Keep in mind, when you've got a concert, you basically have a lot of people doing business together. You can't show your emotions to an entertainer. You can't show the fact that, when I got to meet Paul McCartney, I looked at it like this was us doing business with MPL Communications. I just happened to meet a Beatle and chat with him for a moment. You can't be starstruck. many people are starstruck. It is a business. It is, if you're doing a Rod Stewart show, it is, it's the Todd brothers and Stewart Annoyances doing a deal together. That's the name of his company, by the way, as an example. And you've got to look at it that way. But I would tell a young person, get as much college as you can, get an education, learn theater, or just, get involved with the theater in high school just so you can have an understanding, just so you know a little bit about what stage right and stage left is. Have an idea of how to plug in a microphone. Just understand that element, even if you don't want to be on the production side, understand what they do. There are a lot of ways to get in, and you probably, working for a promoter, you probably have to work your way up as an intern and into an assistant here or there. I don't know how they're bringing up production people. That worries me, because production's a fine art unto itself, just putting it all together. So is talent buying. And really on the venue side, there's opportunities. On the touring side, there's always opportunities. If you're driven, you're going to do something.
Yep.
True.
Well, Steve, we appreciate your time today. We thank you for coming in and
it's my pleasure.
A lot of history, a lot of bands and entertainers that we certainly all know of, whether it be from the 70s, 80s, or 90s, or 2000s. We appreciate hearing the stories.
My pleasure.
And learning more about how your business works.
Mm-hmm.
Thank all of you guys for tuning in on this episode of the Industrious Podcast. We thank you all for joining us from wherever you get your podcasts, or you're joining us on the Assessa YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you guys learned something today. Maybe had a little flashbacks to the days of old. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in. And don't forget, as Steve said, always be industrious.